take you to your first husband, who you mentioned earlier, Maxwell Reed.
Must we?
Well, he sounds an absolutely ghastly piece of work, if you don't mind me saying.
What can I say? I was 18. You know, a girl of 18 at that time is like a girl of 8 today. My 11-year-old granddaughter knows more about life and men than I did at, well, 17 I was when I met him. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about sex. I knew nothing about procreation. I knew nothing. There were no articles. People find it's like it was the last century, but it is kind of strange. I remember asking my mother once, I was in a train carriage, and I saw this word, this written on the wall of the train carriage, F-U-C-K. And I thought, what does that mean? Because I was always very interested in words. So I went to the library and I looked it up, that word. And it wasn't in any of the dictionaries. So I finally said to my mother, Mummy, what does... And she said, that is the worst word you can possibly use. If I told your father if he would ever use that word, I would divorce him. Never use that word. I said, well, what does it mean? She said, I'm not going to tell you. It's terrible. Well, that was that. So that's how innocent I was. Okay?
And is it true, I think you alluded to this earlier, that you felt you had to marry him because you had done the dreaded deed, you'd had sex with him? Yes. You really felt that was...
Yes, I did feel that at the time, yes. Of course, the night before the wedding, I was crying buckets of tears and realising I'd made a terrible mistake. And I went into my father and said, I can't go through with this, I really can't, it's a terrible mistake. I was stupid, I was idiotic. I was stupid. I was an idiot. I was a complete idiot.
What did you say, your father?
He said, oh, I can't, you know, everybody's been invited, you've got to do it. It was horrible, horrible, horrible relationship, awful.
He was very abusive to you, wasn't he?
Not physically.
Verbally abusive?
Yes, physically. Nobody's ever physically abused me because I think they know that they laid one finger on me, I would be out the door forever.
This guy, Maxwell Reed, he threatened to, quote, cut your pretty face.
Yes.
And to try and sell you to an Arab sheikh.
Oh, that? Well, everybody knows about the Arab sheikh.
I didn't know about the Arab sheikh.
Oh, you didn't know about the Arab sheikh? Oh, all right. Well, it sounds funny now, but it was pretty tragic. We'd been married for tottering along for about a year. I had gone off to do 5 plays during the time I was doing movies. I told my agent, get me away from London, whatever you can do. I can't be in London, so I went on tour with this play called The Praying Mantis. I did anything to get away. Anyway, we're sitting at Les Ambassadeurs, and there's this Arab sheikh next door who's kind of talking to Max, and he said, guess what? This man will pay £10,000 for one night with you, and I can even watch. I said, are you serious? He said, yes. He said, think what we can do with £10,000. Now, this is the late 50s. £10,000 then was, I think, probably around 100,000 today, or maybe even more.
Probably $1 million, yeah.
No, yeah. I said, I can't do that. I can't do that. He said, yes, you can. You can do it. I said, no, I can't. I said, I've got to go downstairs, get my coat. I need to go. Just a minute. I've got a part of my nose. So I went down, got in a taxi, went home to Mummy and Daddy, and that was the end of that. I said, I can't go on with this any longer.
Do you think now you would have dealt with him a lot easier and a lot quicker?
Well, of course. Absolutely. Yes, although I have made mistakes, but, you know, show me a person who hasn't made a mistake and I'll show you a person who hasn't lived properly. That's the way I feel.
We touched in the video there on the infamous casting couch. What was it actually like when you first got to it? Were you shocked, or had you been warned how bad it was?
Shocked. They were doing it in England too. I mean, I had one of the producers when I was doing my first movie, I Believe in You, when I was 17. They used to hide me in the wardrobe, in the wardrobe department, in the cupboards at night, because he was on the prowl for me. I mean, there were so many men and actors too who just would, you know, proposition you. And when I think back, it is just extraordinary how on the make so many guys were with a pretty young girl. But I guess they still are today.
I mean, did you feel pressure to succumb?
Absolutely not. Are you kidding? No way I would succumb. No way. Absolutely not.
But didn't you worry that if that was the system, you wouldn't get the best jobs?
No, because
other actresses must have been succumbing, left, right and centre.
Oh, yeah, well, now, fast forward to Hollywood and Cleopatra, and I did several tests for Cleopatra, and I was promised the role by both the head of the studio and the head of the CEO of 20th Century Fox, if I would be nice to them.
Seriously?
And, yes, and they did have me in their office, and I was on the dance floor with one of them, and he said, "Wouldn't you like to be the biggest star on the lot?" And I said, "I would love to." And he said, "Well, then all you have to do is be nice to me." He said, "I'm not an unattractive man." He actually wasn't. He was in his, I guess, 50s, and I guess he was pretty good looking, but I'm 22. And so he was, you know, Santa Claus. And he said, "All you have to do is be nice to me." And I said, "But you're married." That's the naivete. And he said, "Oh, and you know, we'll have a little apartment." And it was just really
How many
hollow.
of your contemporaries do you think were going along with this?
I think quite a few. I can't, you know. Oh, well, Marilyn Monroe but she was before me, admits that she was passed around like a piece of meat. And I think a lot of the girls were. But I didn't really go into specifics. I was so busy living my own life. I wasn't really interested in gossip and hearing what everybody else was doing. And it was not like today, where everybody's on the internet and gossip magazines and twittering and whatever they do, where you knew everything. You didn't really know anything. I wasn't really that interested in gossip.
Do you think the casting couch goes on today?
God, yes. Not with me. I think it does. Yes. I mean, I don't know specifics. No, I honestly, you have to ask my sister. She's into all that. She's into all that, and she writes about it. But I think it does.
You actually replaced Marilyn Monroe in the film.
Yes. In the
pretty extraordinary thing to have happened, yeah.
Well, yes, because the girl that I played was supposed to be 17, and a very innocent young girl, you know, beautiful model in New York. And Marilyn was going to play it, and then the studio said she was too old because she was like 30. So I got to play it. It was a fabulous role.
How did you feel when you heard Marilyn Monroe had been kicked out for being too old and you were replacing her?
I thought, that's showbiz.
Did she ever talk to you about it?
No, I only met her once.
What was she like?
Shy, vulnerable, sweet, kind of scruffy, if you can believe it. I met her at Gene Kelly's house, and she was standing at the bar, and she said, you know, they wanted me to play the role in The Girl in the Red Velvet Swing, but I was too old. And I said, really? She said, yeah. She said, but that's okay, because I'm going to study the Actors Studio in New York. And then she said, watch out for the wolves in Hollywood, honey. And I said, well, I can handle wolves. You know, they're everywhere. She said, no, no, no. And she said, particularly watch out for Zanuck, the head of the studio. And Zanuck, Darryl F. Zanuck, and he was like 5'2", and he was the head of the studio, and he pounced on me one day in the corridor, and that was really scary.
Really?
That was a real casting couch thing, yeah. He had girls come in, hot and cold running girls. I rejected him, and I thought, oh, God, now they're going to drop my contract, but they didn't. This was a time when Jane Fonda and Glenda Jackson and Julie Christie were taking off their gear all over the place. Nobody said anything about them doing soft porn.
In 1963, you married Anthony Newley, a fellow actor.
Yes.
Tell me about him.
Well, I think that Tony was a flawed genius. I think he wasn't quite sure in which direction to go, because he was a singer, he was a writer, he was a performer, he did everything. And but he was a tormented soul. He was tormented. And I don't know why, but he was.
Look at you there.
Yeah, that's a pretty good-looking couple. He looked so much like Sasha. My son looked so much like him.
Because you quite quickly had two children,
yes.
Tara and Sasha.
Yes, that's what I wanted. I was getting very broody. This was my late 20s, and I wanted to have children then.
You spoke very movingly in your book about when your mother was dying, that she said to you her great wish was that you would have a child.
Yes.
She felt that very strongly.
Yes.
And you then felt it very strongly after she died that you should do that.
Yes, I did, because I felt, even though I was only 26, I thought, you know, that was considered old to have children then. The prima para, whatever they call it. But I also was starting to look at babies in prams. I've always loved babies anyway. I still love babies. Every time there's a baby around, I go and go cuckoo. And so I thought, yes, I want to have children. And I thought he would be, you know, the good father.
Did you enjoy being a mum?
I loved being a mum, yes. And I gave up my career for several years and was a sort of full-time mum. In fact, there was, do you know Art Buchwald? Of course you do. Art Buchwald, the American writer. He wrote an article about me called A Most Peculiar Mother, because I was in St. Moritz with all the grand ladies in their fur hats and going out to lunch. And I schlepped my baby around in a basket because I didn't have a nanny. And all of the rest of them said, she's so weird. Why is she taking her baby around like that? But that's the side of me that people have always been surprised about.
See, I was surprised that you gave up your career at its peak, really, to be a mum for a while.
It wasn't its peak, no. It wasn't its peak. I never really... The peak really was Dynasty. Dynasty. There they are. Aren't they cute?
Look at you. My God.
Yeah, I was a yummy mummy, I guess.
You certainly were. Unfortunately, your relationship with Tony began to drift apart again. I mean, you've been through one divorce, which is obviously a chaotic marriage. You were very young. The second one, I would imagine, hurt you a lot more because you were older and probably didn't want to get divorced again.
I did not want to get divorced, no. I did not want to get divorced because of the children and because having had already one stupid juvenile mistake, I didn't want to have another. But unfortunately, Tony, I wouldn't say unable to commit, but quite commitment phobic in a lot of ways. And I think that came out in the movie that he made, which was semi-autobiographical, except it was more autobiographical than semi. That movie showed him, as the lead character, having non-stop series of affairs with women. And I realized that was our life. That's what his life was. And I couldn't accept that. And so at the age of, I don't know, 33, 34, whatever, I realized that I couldn't go on with that marriage. And as sad as it was for the children, and it was really sad for the children, and I knew they were, I think Sasha was 3 or 4 and Tara was 5 or 6. And so we left. I left Los Angeles. I left the beautiful house in Summit Drive with the parties and Sammy Davis and Paul Newman and all those people, Steve McQueen coming over. And I took the children and went to London. And it was a shock for them, you know, to go from the Beverly Hills life with the swimming pool and the dogs and the sunshine to come to London in the dank and the wet and the rain. And, I mean, I love London. I was brought up in that. But the children were, you know, American.
But did they ever blame you for leaving their dad or not?
I don't think... I think they might have when they were young. But I think they realised after they saw the movie that it really wasn't my fault.
I mean, people will look at the pictures of you there and knowing... You're very intelligent, you're very funny. I mean, you're almost the perfect woman.
I know.
Why would a guy...
And I can cook.
And you can cook. I mean, why on earth would he be a serial adulterer to somebody like you?
Because the expression, a leopard can't change their spots. And I should have known that before I went in. And he hinted at it, but he said he thought he could change.
It was back in London that your career took a bit of a back seat, but you're already plotting a return to the limelight.